Good morning. And grace and peace to you. Excuse me. Thank you, Dawn, for this prayer, and Jim for the songs, Rick for your thoughts at the table. Thank you for your singing. Do you remember this week, Lord willing, and I imagine most of you, if not all of you, will be getting together for a Thanksgiving family get-together. Do you remember it's not about the turkey or the ham or the pie, but it's about God and the Lord Jesus Christ and His putting that on your table. So we thank Him for every good thing. 1 Samuel 17. I hope I can get all this in this morning. I don't think it'll go into the afternoon. The story of David and Goliath, one of the best known and most loved stories in the Bible. Goliath, the warrior champion of the Philistines, facing off against Israel. David, the shepherd lad who steps up with his bag, his sling, his stones, the champion who put Saul and the rest of the army to shame by what he did. It's a marvelous story filled with truths that we want to put into our lives this morning. And I want to approach it basically from one way, but we're going to look at a couple of different things, and I'm not sure what's going to come out here this morning because there's so much here. It is a true story. It is an actual event that happened, and we want to remember that. And we're going to deal with that, but we're going to make this into an allegory. And if you remember what an allegory is, you can go to Galatians chapter 4, where Paul used the example of Hagar and her son Ishmael, and Sarah and her son Isaac, to say they were two different covenants and two different promises from God or times from God. That Ishmael was of the flesh and Isaac was of the spirit. That they were real people, but he used them allegorically, and that's what we want to do today. But our allegory is going to be blended, because the first allegory is going to be that of Jesus Christ in the person of David facing off with Goliath, who is Satan. And understanding that Israel was humanity, and we could never defeat the giant by ourselves. That's the one. I'm not going to build it up a lot, but that one's there. But the other one I want to look at is this, that David is us in our own lives facing off against Satan, against evil, against problems and adversities and troubles in our life, and that God will help us overcome whatever we have to face. And that's what we need to do. Face our problems, our adversity, our persecutions directly on, head on, and not try to run from them. So that's where we're going with this lesson. So we're going to ask the question, are you a champion this morning? Are you a fighter? Or are you a runner? It's a serious question. And I think today the church is suffering because we have too many runners and not enough fighters. Not enough champions who will stand up against what is evil, who will stand up for good, will stand up for somebody that's being oppressed or bullied or hurt. And we just turn our heads and look away. You can be a champion with God's help. We have to be if we're going to win this battle. You have to be if you're going to win the battle in your life. And you're not just going to slide away and be lost. 1 Samuel 17. Here we go. Hang on. Say a prayer for me. There's so much here, and you're going to have to fill in the blanks. And as I've said so many times, we give you the scriptures to look at and to read later, to study over, and to get it deeper into your hearts after you hear what we have to say in one of these lessons. There's so much in the Word of God, so much to learn, and folks, there's so little time that we have to learn it. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Soko, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes Damim. Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array to encounter the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, while Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. The Lord and his people have always been opposed by evil and by wickedness, by false gods. And even though the devil is no longer in charge, he's still on the prowl, as we know, as Peter writes. He has a lot of agents. He has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. He attacks you head on. He'll hit you by the flank, or he will deceive you in some way to try to bring you down, to hurt you, and not just you, but your family, your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, your friends. Believe me, he does not love you. He hates you. Don't be fooled. Some people are surprised when things don't go smoothly in their life and trouble pops up. They're caught off guard, and therefore they get down and are terribly disappointed. We have to remember that these things will happen in life. There will be trouble. There will be opposition. The devil is out there, and we must be prepared. This was one thing that David was. He was prepared. As we look in this story, we're going to look at a couple of thoughts about David. If you remember, it's mentioned in the New Testament that he was a man after God's own heart. And I'd ask myself the question, and maybe have you ever asked yourself the question, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a person after God's own heart? I think in this story that is revealed to a great extent, and we're going to point that out in a couple of ways. And the first one is the fact that he was prepared. He understood life. He understood there would be problems, there would be challenges, and he was ready for them. And this all began when he was a shepherd boy. As we're going to see later on, he talked about the fact the bear and the lion came around to take his sheep. Life is not always good. Now, we're not saying we should go around with a glum look and feel down all the time and worried that something's going to happen and somebody standing around the corner is going to hit us in the head. We should have the joy of the Lord, but we should walk in faith and be ready. Be ready. If God gives us a beautiful, wonderful day like right now, rejoice in that day. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice in it. But let's not be caught off guard when something doesn't go right and we all of a sudden just, boom, go in the pit. We have to be prepared, have the right attitude and know, oh, God's still with me and he's going to bring me through it, bring me out of it, and he'll bring some good from it. Verse 4. Then a champion came out from the armies of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed with scale armor, which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. He also had bronze greaves on his legs and a bronze javelin slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of the spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. His shield bearer also walked before him. He was one big, nasty dude. 9 foot tall plus. The armor itself weighed 125 pounds, and the head of the spear was 15 pounds. You ever tried to hold a gallon of milk for a while? What is that, 2 pounds? 8. A gallon of milk is 8 pounds? Really? That much? Okay, I was wrong. But anyway, that's only half of the spearhead. He was a professional soldier with armament unlike what the Israelites had. You know, in that day, the Philistines are the one that really had the iron. The Israelites didn't have a whole lot as far as armor and spears and swords. To take it from the allegorical side, often your problem looks this huge, this powerful, and this mean. It's the kind you lose sleep over, you run from, you wish it wasn't there, it gives you a headache and upsets your stomach. You think there's no solution and it's all over. There's no way I get out of this or get through it. Ever had one of those? You know, it could be anything from financial to relationships to jobs to some kind of disease. Anything. We've all been there, even though you didn't raise your hand. Could be death in the family. You want to give up, and you want to give in, and you want to quit. In fact, that's what Israel was doing here. They had no answer for Goliath. Verse 8. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel and said to them, "Why do you come up to draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine and you servants of Saul?" Saul was the king. "Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us." Again, the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." In verse 16, the Philistine came forward morning and evening for 40 days and took his stand. And sometimes your problem just doesn't go away, and it's got a big mouth like this and is constantly in your face. What do? He was defying the armies of God. And all those great warriors would not step out, not a one. Saul the king, who was to be the greatest, if you know your history, the king, he was supposed to be the strongest, one of the strongest, the bravest, to lead his people. Saul would not get out of his tent to face Goliath. They cowered in fear. This is humanity before Satan. We had the lesson not too long ago about Jesus coming to do the will of God. What was that will? To live a perfect life before God so he could destroy the works of the devil. And Jesus came and he did that. He took down Satan. And he overcame him for our sins, for ourselves, for our life. We're going to jump down to verse 23. That's the situation. David unbeknownst to him and to his father, was sent by Jesse, his father, to check on his brothers. He had his 3 older brothers were in the army. And Jesse sent David along with some cheese, some roasted grain, and some bread to help support the army and see how his brothers were doing. So David just kind of shows up. He has not been sent by anybody to face this giant. And I think that's an important point in this story. But that brings us down to verse 23, where David is there among the soldiers. And as he was talking with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine from Gath, named Goliath, was coming up from the army of the Philistines, and he spoke these same words, and David heard them, what we just heard. He defying the army. Come out, somebody come out and fight me. When all the men of Israel saw the man, they fled from him and were greatly afraid, you see. They wouldn't face him. Do we still use the term chicken today? I hate to say it, but they were. Are you chicken? When something bad comes your way, do you run from it? Or do you face off with it? Do you stand against the evil, against the wickedness, against what is wrong? Or do you turn away? What do I do? Verse 25, the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who is coming up? Surely he is coming up to defy Israel, and it will be that the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. That means he didn't have to pay any taxes. Wow. That might be the biggest incentive of all, right? Then David spoke to the men who were standing by him, saying, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should taunt the armies of the living God? Here is indignation, the righteous anger. And the second aspect of the fact that David was a man after God's own heart. He recognized evil and he wouldn't stand for it. He said, this ain't going to happen. Who is this guy? He didn't care how tall he was. He didn't care what kind of army he had. This wasn't right. Something had to be done. The question for you and me, do we care if something isn't right? If people are being crushed, if God is being blasphemed, if people are lost, wandering away? Are we apathetic? Are we just too comfortable? Are we afraid? Do we just not care? We're so full of ourselves and are so selfish that we don't really care about anybody else, nor about the kingdom of heaven. We need to be challenged that our cause is just and worth fighting for. Some things are not. They're kind of petty. Don't waste your time. But when something is truly wrong, somebody is truly hurting, somebody is truly lost, somebody is truly deceived, you are being hurt in a way that's not right, stand up. Get angry for the right reason. Verse 31. When the words which David spoke were heard, they told them to Saul, and he sent for him. See, the word that he says, who is this guy? That shouldn't happen. Evidently, nobody else in the army ever said that. David expresses this indignation. What's going on here? That's not right. And when somebody tells Saul the king, verse 32, David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail on account of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Bear in mind again, David was not recruited for this task. He says, "I volunteer, I will go and fight." Out of nowhere. He just shows up. He sees what's going on. He says, "I'll do it. This shouldn't happen." Again, we ask the question, do we want to fight anymore? I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about with our words of truth, with our money, with prayer, with being present, with our work, with our service, to put ourselves out there, to take action when something needs to happen. Or are we just happy where we are? We'll just let people go. Let things happen. And we have no responsibility whatsoever. David was a man after God's own heart. I could have titled this lesson that. 33. Then Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, while he has been a warrior from his youth." And David said to Saul, "Your servant was tending his father's sheep. When a lion or bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went out after him and attacked him and rescued it from his mouth. And when he rose up against me, I seized him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Here again, the man after God's own heart had courage. He says, "I've done this before." This took me back to the parable of the 90 and 9 in Luke. Remember that? The shepherd had 100 sheep and one wandered off, and he went and looked for it to bring it back. That was David. Here he says, the lion or the bear had the sheep. He had it. And he went and he struck that lion, or struck the bear to get that sheep back. He was not, I won't say he wasn't afraid, but he had the courage to overcome that fear. You know, courage is courage no matter what the situation. Whether you're facing a Goliath or you're just standing up in some kind of a meeting and speaking your piece, what needs to be said, or whether you're talking with someone here and they are way off base when it comes to the truth of God, courage is courage, and we need to have it. And David had it. He was not afraid to face the bear or the lion, and he was not afraid, I'm saying it, to face Goliath. He said, "I'm going to do it." Goliath will just be like the bear or the lion. Whether it's a problem in your house or it's something a lot bigger, the Lord can handle it. The Lord can handle big things, and he can handle little things. He likes to handle them all for you, whatever they are. Why is that? Because he loves you. You know, right now I've got a lot of little things going on. And if you know Jeff, you know I like everything to be organized and flowing very smoothly. And I think most of you do too. Some of you are kind of messed up. Hither and yon, helter-skelter, but that's not me. And I'm trying to work my way through it, and I know God is helping me do it, and he's already given me a couple of signs that he's helping me, and I just have to have patience. And he's taking care of a lot of what would be considered little things, but they're very frustrating, as you know they can be. Verse 39. David girded his sword over his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. That Saul tries to give David his armor and his weaponry. David said to Saul, I cannot go with these. I've not tested them. And David took them off. So he took what he knew, what he had prepared, what he had practiced. He took his stick. This says stick. I don't like that. New King James has staff. That's probably better. He was a shepherd. Took his staff in his hand, chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, put them in the shepherd's bag, which he had even in his pouch, and his sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. David relied upon what he knew, what he was familiar with, what he had practiced again and again and again. What life skills have you learned? What scriptural skills have you learned? Have you learned to pray? Have you learned how to present the gospel? Have you learned how to speak against someone who's speaking wrong? Have you learned to trust God? Have you learned self-control and not to start yelling and screaming when you know you should just be talking gently? What have you learned? What have you practiced to be like Christ, to face off in these kinds of situations? We don't think about that. We need to. What talents and gifts that God has given you have you developed to use in the kingdom, to use in this fight against evil, to bring about good? David had developed these skills. I'm not going to reveal anything special about the 5 smooth stones, other than this was something that David knew. He had the staff. The stones were smooth because they could track truly, straight as he wanted them to go. They would not be deflected by the air. There were 5 because Goliath was a big man and he had armor. And so he didn't know but what he might need 2 or 3 to bring him down. But that's what he took. And that's all he had. It would be interesting if we had a staff and a sling and 5 smooth stones over here and put all of Goliath's armor over here. The head, the helmet, the mail armor, the greaves, the javelin, the sword, the spear, the shield. Wow. What was the difference? The difference was God. Do we trust God? Do we really trust God? Or are we just trusting ourselves? Are we prepared for the day of battle? Are we people of honesty, integrity, truth, compassion, faith, and on we can go? Fighting for the Lord. Not just for ourselves, but for God. David was prepared. He took what he knew, he took it into battle, and he trusted God to give him the victory. 44, as we finish it up. The Philistine also said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field." And David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and remove your head from you. And I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky, and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord does not deliver by sword or by spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." And he was saying that as much to Goliath as he was to the army of Israel, who was just standing there. That they would know there is a God in Israel. And that's the way you win battles, not by swords and spears. Do not be intimidated. Hold to God and what you know. Be confident in the Lord. The battles we fight are no different than this battle. They're not any different. We have to take what we know, what we've learned, what we've developed, that God has blessed us with, and trust him, and go forth to fight against evil, lies, and all that's wicked. 48, the last thought. Then it happened when the Philistine rose and came and drew near to meet David. Watch this. Then David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. He says, "Come on, let's do it. I'm not afraid of you." And David put his hand into his bag, took from it a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead so that he fell on his face to the ground. Thus David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and he struck the Philistine and killed him, but there was no sword in David's hand. Goes on to say he took the Goliath's sword and cut off his head. Again, you can finish it. I encourage you to go back and read it all. Face the situation head on. Don't back down. Be strong in the deciding moment. And as I thought about that, I thought, a lot of these situations we have in facing evil and facing problems and facing trouble, there's a deciding moment where you have to really step up and say, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to back down. David had the deciding moment. He did not back down. He ran quickly. He says, I'm going to take this guy out. And with God's help, he did, with one stone. Just one. Every problem we have won't be solved as quickly and decisively as David's defeating Goliath. Some will. We need to face our problems, stand up for what's good and right. Maybe you're standing up for somebody else, which is really what David did here. He stood up for Saul and the rest of the army. You can be a champion with God's help. And the question for you and me is, will we do that? God bless us as we face our enemies.